Welcome back to the Team Radio podcast. We're here for another episode this week, and we touched quite a lot on rally last week, and I'm sure we're going to be touching on it again, but somebody who those in the feeder series space will know as the Eurocup-3 and at Spanish Sheffield, sometimes commentator, sometimes pit reporter as well. Welcome in to Àlex Garcia. It's a pleasure to have you on. Can you just tell the viewers a little bit more about yourself?
First of all, thank you very much, Joseph. It's always a pleasure to share a little bit of our love for motorsports with everyone. So I'm sure we're going to have some good fun. And well, you said pretty much all there is to know about me, I guess, in terms of what we're doing currently. WRC commentator in Spanish. That is for the official WRC live app, as well as mainly reporter for Formula 4 Spanish Championship and Eurocup-3. Sometimes commentator, yes, it happens. It's not intended, although I have done commentary for many, many years, but that's my role. I only basically jump when there's some kind of issue, any kind of technical troubles, which we've had in the past. It happens, it's live TV. But yeah, no, I had a good fun with it as well last year with the Spanish Winter Championship, which I am told that people quite enjoyed it, which made me very, very happy because that was my first time doing it in English. So that's pretty nice. And also, in case that anybody who's listening is from Spain or a Spanish-speaking country or knows Spanish, I am currently also coordinating a magazine, a print magazine, which is rare in these times in Spain, which is called Fium. And we're touching all the history of Formula One. So it's basically one topic per magazine. We issue one every 3 months, so it's a pretty cool project. Of course, I'm biased, but it is a very nice project, and I think if anyone knows Spanish, go check it out because it's really, really cool.
If only I knew Spanish beyond the
time to learn
the basics. Well, exactly, and I can use it to learn. Of course, as your role pit reporter for those two championships, the single-seater championships, and then also commentator in WRC. How does it differ, the difference between the roles, and is there any crossover between the two?
I think at the end of the day, the crossover is just you need to know what you're talking about. So you need to know, who drivers are, the stories, and as much as you can know about what's going on really on track, if I may. I know rally is hardly a track, but we'll just call it that for the sake of the argument. And that's pretty much it. At the end of the day, there is obviously a big difference because when you're on site, you can actually talk to people, and then they tell you a little bit of how they're feeling, and even if sometimes they don't tell you, you can glean it from their behavior. As an example, last weekend on Sunday, I just met with Noah Montero just before the start. He was just already with his headphones on, like fully focused. We saw each other inside his box, and he saw me. He walked to me, and we greeted each other. And like his face was not, he had a bad weekend up until that point. And I saw his face, and I was like, okay, this is not the face of one who's struggling. This has changed. This is the face of someone who wants to fight. So I knew that they had found something. And sure enough, when race time came, he was fighting for the win. He ended up finishing in the podium, which clearly was an improvement over the past two races in the weekend. So sometimes you kind of like get these little snippets of information, and you can share them with the people, which I cannot do when I'm commentating in this case, I do it from Spain. So it is perhaps more focused on, explaining what we see on TV, whereas with reporting, you kind of go and find the story, in a sense. So sometimes all the work that's done is actually the one that you guys don't see, which is the one that's done before and after the broadcast.
What kind of things are you looking out for in terms of the different characteristics for a tarmac circuit, and then a gravel circuit, and then snow, and all these sorts of things?
Mainly you look at the general tendencies. For example, what happens with tarmac is that the guy who starts first gets an advantage. The stage is cleaner. There's no dirt kicked into the racing line. So when you have all those drivers who start later, remember that the rally stages, basically Fridays depend on the championship order, then from Saturday onwards you depend on the results from Friday, etc., etc. So you have drivers who are perhaps starting later on Friday saying, well, the conditions are not so good because everyone's ahead of us is kicking dirt into the racing line, which sometimes they do it on purpose, by the way. So they cut a little bit more, knowing that if they cut, they get some dirt onto the racetrack or the stage, and that's a problem for the guy coming behind. So these things happen with tarmac, whereas with gravel is the opposite. The guy who starts first has an issue because the stage is just not cleaned yet. There's a lot of dirt, there's a lot of dust, nothing's removed yet, and you need 2, 3, 4 cars that kind of get that first layer out, and after the fourth, fifth car, then things start getting quicker. And then you have the guy starting ahead saying, well, I'm starting ahead, I'm just sweeping the stage for everyone, and that's not comfy, blah, blah, blah. In the end, it's more or less equalized throughout the season. But it is an issue that you need to always remember, because sometimes you have a guy who's very, very good in tarmac, but he's starting very far back for whatever reason, and he's going to struggle. That's normal. Snow's a bit of a unique case, just because snow depends also on what cars drove before your own stage start. So, for example, if it's a second pass, then you usually have the narrower tracks from the Rally 2s and sometimes the two-wheel drive cars, and then that makes it difficult for the cars that start. But if it's first in the morning, maybe that's not so much of a problem. So kind of changes between first and second passes, which is also a thing that you have to consider, which is rally drivers get to do most stages twice in the same day. So they kind of remember, and then if they make a mistake on the first one, then they know how to correct that for the second one, or vice versa. Sometimes they fix a node, and then they fix it too much, and then they go too hot into a corner, and then something happens. So you need to kind of keep those things in mind, because the dynamic is completely different to circuit racing, which, as you know, drivers do the same circuit, the same 4.5 kilometers, 60, 70 times during a weekend.
Of course, we've got Eurocup-3 coming up this weekend. And Aitor Delanhol has really been an unknown quantity for me this year, coming from racing in Brazilian F4, where we don't really know much about it in the European racing scene, to, of course, where he is now in Eurocup-3. He's got 3 podiums across the Eurocup-3 Spanish Winter Championship and the summer season. How would you view his performances so far?
I think he's doing a good job. I think, however, that he's also helped by how well Palo Motorsport is getting on this year. I think that's probably one of the big surprises of the season. Not because they were a bad team, they were never a bad team, but they didn't have the wealth of experience that Campos and MP Motorsport have had for so many years, and also the infrastructure that they have from all those FIA F2, FIA F3 teams. So for me, they were perhaps one of the big surprises. And in that sense, maybe I'm not that surprised that he's been doing well. But it is always nice to see someone who doesn't necessarily come from the same European single-seater feeder series background and doing a good job. I think that just shows that there's talent everywhere. Doesn't matter if you come from Europe, you come from Asia, you come from the States, you come from South America. You always have some good hands that you can just put in a good car and they'll do well. So it's exciting. Plus, the kid is a very nice kid, so that always makes you want to root for them a little bit more, because not everyone is going to be just as nice. That's normal. That's natural. But it's impossible to have certain drivers that you favor a little bit more, just a little bit.
What can you see in Justin Mulder? Is there a real talent there, or is it too early to tell?
I would say it's too early, but I was very impressed with how he got on with the F4 in Motorland. The weekend was a tricky weekend, as we discussed before starting. It was extremely hot, so conditions were very, very different from what the teams would have had from the Spanish Winter Championship. And nobody knew very well what they would find. Yes, of course, there's references from other seasons, but they all had to kind of like reset and start from scratch. And maybe that helped him. I don't know. But what's clear is that he's driving for a team that is not necessarily one of the top teams. And why this is important is because, as opposed to Eurocup-3, in the Formula 4 Spanish Championship, you have, or rather, I should say, by having 4 different teams, you have so many drivers who could be fighting for top positions. I like to count usually 14, 15 drivers consistently being able to fight for podiums, or in theory being able to fight for podiums. In reality, you end up having maybe half of them, but half of them is still almost the top 10. So for a new driver to arrive, new team, being in the top 10 more than once, and not belonging to any of those 4 teams, that would be Campos, MP, DriveX, and Technicar, that is very impressive. In fact, I distinctly remember going to my Spanish colleague commentator, David Blay, doing the lead commentating in Spanish, after race 1, and I said, please make sure to mention Mulder on the second race, because that was a very, very nice way to get started. Because I kept an eye on that, and I was like, that's impressive. I don't know how things will develop. Probably, in all fairness, he needs to climb to a stronger team to have more chances, but that's not too bad at all.
I mean, it is a good start, especially as the majority of the drivers were. They've already competed in quite a lot of Spanish F4 this season, including the Winter Championship. Would you say the Winter Championship is usually a good indication of who's going to be contending in the main season, or are there always some surprises that come into it?
It should be. By all accounts, it should absolutely be. And yet there's always something different enough that you think, oh, I wasn't expecting that. But there's always an indication. So, for example, when you look at the Spanish Winter Championship in Eurocup-3, you already had Keanu Alazari and James Agozzi pretty much showing that they were going to be the two men to beat. And so far it has been that way. Maybe I was expecting a bit more from Keanu on these first rounds. He did tell me himself, he said, I have to start getting my starts better. So he's aware that that's been the main issue. And James was perhaps a little bit unlucky in the Spanish Winter Championship, and he has done very, very well in the regular season so far. But that was very clear that they were big names to keep in mind. And if you remember in Formula 4, or I should say E4, because the FIA won't let us call it Formula 4, because as you know, you can only have one Formula 4 national in the season. So for us to use it to call it the Spanish Formula 4 or Formula 4 Spanish Championship, there would have to be no regular season. So as I always like to joke, you could perhaps call this Spanish Winter Championship Portuguese Formula 4, and that would be, fair enough, because it wouldn't exist in a regular season, but since there's no option, we just go with E4. But in any case, if you look at that, you could see already that Technicar was a little bit quicker than normal. They were doing a little bit better than normal, just enough that you would think, okay, let's see what happens when the regular season comes. And they have been, to me, the biggest surprise so far, in both series, I would add.
He's, as you say, had a tricky Winter Championship. He does seem to be getting up to speed a little bit more and showing that pace that we know that he has. Just taking a look at both the series as a whole, and you can pick anybody from either of these or somebody from both. I know that I've got the driver in my mind who I think you're going to say on this. Who has been the best driver you've ever seen in the Eurocup-3 or Spanish F4?
It's difficult. It's difficult to say. I think I was mostly impressed with two people. One, I'm thinking that it's probably the one you're thinking. So I'm thinking of Mattia Colnaghi from last year.
Yeah.
His run through the two series was very good. Both in 24 and 25, he won on his debut, which is always quite impressive. But more than anything, I was impressed with his mindset. So he came as a rookie in Formula 4. He started, being competitive. And even though Keanu Alazari was dominating the first half of the championship, he never really let that domination get to him. He just kept doing his own work and, working in his own direction. And by the end of the season, when he saw that there was a chance, he just went for it. And that's what net him the championship at the end of the day. And it was maybe a bit different with Eurocup-3, which I think has historically been a bit kinder to rookies. But it was just quick from the get-go. So that's usually a good sign. I am so hoping that he gets to have a bit of a better luck in FIF3. I think he has more talent than what has been shown so far. So I'm definitely hoping for that. And one driver also who impressed me was a year before, in 2024, Christian Ho. I didn't see him in 23 in Formula 4 directly. I watched him from the outside. But in Eurocup, I saw a guy who was incredibly driven. And we tend to joke, behind the scenes. We used to joke a little bit. We used to say he's a bit like Kimi Räikkönen. You would ask him, "Well, you finished second, points for the championship." He'd be like, "I don't care about the points. I just came here to win, and I didn't win, so I'm not satisfied with that. We need to work harder. We need to win." And to me, at this stage, that is very unusual because you have drivers who are thinking of the championship because they know they need those points and they need the results and all those things. But he just kept one thing in his mind. It was just winning. Nothing else really mattered. And I like guys with this kind of attitude as well, because those are the ones that tend to make it somewhere. So I'm also looking forward to that. But I'll also add that I've been very impressed this year with James Agozzi, for example. This is something of a comment that ran among the drivers themselves last year, but they called him the Eurocup 3.5 champion. They called him last year because he was, let's say, the best of the rest outside of the big teams, with Palo, and he was kind of like leading the team forward. And this year, when the car's there, he's shown that he has always had that talent, and he's on that second year, which I said before, right? That's like the key that you want. If you're on that second year, you're fine probably for progressing if you do well enough. So those would be my picks, I think.
Leading the championship at the moment, James Agosi, having been on the podium in every single race so far, Kalarov and Pera. He's trying to step over to single-seaters after obviously taking 2 titles in his rally. You've obviously got experience covering both disciplines. His aim is to get to Formula One. Can you see a world where that is achieved?
I would have always said yes if you have asked me 6 months ago. Now, after his health troubles, I don't know. First of all, he's lost a year, and we just need to acknowledge that. He's not a 15, 16-year-old driver starting from scratch his single-seater career. He doesn't have as much time as other drivers would have to get there. He has very clear plans ahead, so he knows what he has to do and how he has to do it. His plans were basically 1 or 2 years in Super Formula, which I've also followed for many, many years, so I know the series very well. And 2 years there is enough to get those good learnings. Super Formula is very different from Formula 2. I've talked to some of the Japanese drivers who tried to make the jump from Asia to Europe, and they said that the biggest change is that in Super Formula, you basically go to the manufacturer, you say, look, I need this and this and that. And usually Toyota or Honda will just work to get that car that you need. Remember that this is a 2-engine formula, and 2-engine formula means different engine, different gearbox, different rear end. So that's the whole rear suspension even needs to change. So you have some things that you can do with the car which maybe you cannot do necessarily in Formula 2. And when drivers come to Europe, they find that basically they go to the engineer lets them know, they say, this is the best way to drive this car, get on with it. And this is a struggle, because this is also not what they're going to find in Formula 1. They can give feedback to the engineers, and the engineers are going to fiddle with things a little bit. I don't mean settings, I mean the actual parts and, settings beyond settings, if you will. And this is a big struggle. But whatever the case, Kalle was always going to do 1 or 2 years in Super Formula, depends on how quick he is. And 1 or 2 years in Formula 2, depends on how quick he is, and see where he stands after that. There's the matter of the super license points. There's no going around it. If he gets those 40 points, he will race in Formula 1. I think no matter the results that he has, if he doesn't get those points, there's no chance that he's racing. Because nobody's going to do an exception for him. Which, on the one hand, I understand. On the other hand, feels like a shame, because nobody's ever done that. No rally driver has ever raced in Formula 1. We have seen Formula 1 drivers doing rallying, but not the other way around. So I am so fascinated by the possibility that he might make it. I want to think he will. The talent is insane. We've seen him do things on a rally car that just beggar belief. But a rally car is not a single-seater. So we need to see how he gets on with it. His first tests with Super Formula were not too bad. We know that the easy, let's say the easy parts are the one that he's done already, which is getting within 2-3 seconds of the best times. The difficult ones are the ones that come after that, as very well shown by my former driver, which is Juju Noda, since I did work with her father as both her manager for a time and team manager as well. And she's still struggling with that pace. She did a very good job getting to that, let's say, Super Formula level. But in terms of getting to points level, podium level, fighting for wins level, that's where the real difficulty lies. So let's see if Kalle can do it. One thing that's important, though, they are going to have the help of high tech. That always helps, because they have experience in so many categories. So that's going to help. I was convinced that he was going to drive a Formula 1 car this year if he hadn't been injured. I don't think that's going to happen this year, but I think we will see it next year. Probably a Haas around Fuji or something like that.
And he would join a list of rally drivers to have tested a Formula 1 car, but obviously, as you say, none have actually competed. Colin McRae and Sebastian Loeb, the two that come to mind, and Loeb actually the closest probably of any rally driver to make it to Formula One in terms of the modern age.
And both did a very good job, because if you check what Eddie Jordan was saying about Collins' time, he was saying he was actually close enough to Martin Brundle was in that case. He said, look, if he wanted to switch, he probably would get to go quite quickly, which was a testament to Colin McRae's talent, which, I mean, we all know it, but I always found that fascinating to imagine as well.
It's one of the biggest what ifs, I think. Obviously he'd have had that seat. He would have torn up the tyres, that's for sure. Coming up in a couple of weeks' time is the Rally Estonia. It was Oliver Solberg's debut win here last year, obviously the fantastic talent. Might he be able to take the title this year and slot himself into third place in terms of the youngest WRC champions behind Kalle and Kalle?
I spoke from the beginning of the season. Anybody who asked me, I said, I don't think he should be getting to that championship. Not because he doesn't have the talent. He very much has the speed, but he's too prone to mistakes. And we love him for that, because he's always giving everything he has. But every time you watch him driving, you're at the edge of your seat, and not always in a good way. You're always thinking, you take too many risks, mate. Just lift 5%. You'll get there. You'll finish third. Those are valuable points. Other people are going to make mistakes. You're going to get to the end of the season with a real shot at the title. But he always gives that little bit extra. I remember seeing him lose rallies in Rally 2 where he was leading by 2 minutes. And at that point you think, what was the need? You didn't have any need for that. You could have just lifted a little bit and just let the rally resolve itself, because you already did the hard job. And again, this is what shows the talent, and this is what shows he had to show that he had the speed to get to Rally 1. And it might be not, of course, the mistakes, but those times where he didn't make mistakes is probably what earned the seat in Toyota. But it just hurts so much when you see him making the same kind of mistakes time and time again. Now, Estonia might be the key point of the championship for him. If he can, I don't even say winning, if he can get to be in the podium and fight for the win and show that he can do it, no mistakes, it's a very, very fast rally, one where mistakes are very costly. If he's there, he can fight for that. But he really needs someone to sit down with him and get him to calm down a little bit. In that sense, for example, that's what Taka Katsuta has had this year. He's having the help of Oit Tanak as a coach, and I think that's done wonders for him. So sometimes it is all about understanding where your weaknesses lay and finding someone to help you with those, because you can always improve as I think as any sportsman or sportswoman would say. If you're just competing to be the best, you always need to think, okay, what can I improve? What can I do best? What can I get better than yesterday? So that's what he should be doing. Now, he's exciting. There's no doubt about that. So there might be a chance that he has a good run. He wins 2 or 3 rallies and suddenly things are alive again. But I just don't see it. I honestly think that Elfyn Evans has probably the best chance of his career to be a champion finally.
Yeah, and it would be great to see him after being the Nearly man for seemingly so many years. Last question for you before I let you go. Do you have a favourite race or rally or otherwise?
I would have to say I'm a good old single-seater fan. I've always loved F1 more than probably anything. But my answer is actually none of those single-seater races. Probably the one race that I found to be more amazing than anything else in the world is Le Mans. I went there first when I was just 10 years old. And I had the luck of seeing a fantastic year, because we had Toyota, Nissan, Mercedes, BMW, Ferrari, McLaren with the GT1, Panos with the GT1 as well. We had, I don't know, I once counted 15 or 16 potential candidates for the win without balance of performance, which that was very fun to watch. And even as a child, I could see that. And I just thought, this is way better than Formula One in every conceivable way. And in 2016 and 17, I had the chance to come back. So yes, I did see that legendary now moment with Toyota, losing the race at the very, very, very last moment. I actually was there with Toyota at the time. So that was an experience to have. But it's just beyond any other event in motorsport that I have been to. I always say that probably there's only one event in the world that could come close to it or even impress me more, which would be the Indy 500, which I think is probably pretty insane as well. But I am very European, so I suspect I would still like endurance racing more. But I just want to look at it like from from up close and leave it from that perspective. Would have been nice to go, for example, one of the Alonso years, but that didn't pan out. But that's the one that I'm missing, I guess. Monaco F1 probably is pretty spectacular as well, but I don't know. I don't think it can come close to Le Mans. Le Mans is just the atmosphere is insane. So many fans. Everyone who's there more or less knows what's going on, so it's not even a casual fan. Everyone's hardcore there about endurance, about car racing, and they know the brands and they know the drivers, and they have the parade in the city, and it's like everything of it is just so cool. It's probably the only event where you could go for a week, and every day you would have something to do related to the event that would feel different to every other day, and you would still come back to the hotel satisfied, not just like a Thursday in Formula One. There's not much to do from a fan perspective, but from Le Mans perspective, it's just great. So yeah, definitely Le Mans. That's the one that I've enjoyed the most. I miss it so much, really.
It's on my bucket list, definitely. And well, I mean, never say never in terms of returning or going for me for the first time.
100% recommended.
But that'll be it from myself and from Àlex here today. Thank you very much for joining me, and thank you very much to everybody for watching as well. Don't forget to like, subscribe, do all of the fun things that help this show get promoted, and down in the description as well as Alex's social media of choice, which I haven't asked him just yet, but we will get on to. And until next time, it is goodbye.